So we start on the floor with Dandasana, and it begins the series of forward folds known as Paschimottanasana. So we just finished in downward facing dog after that Virabhadrasana A and Virabhadrasana B series. We did that vinyasa and ended up in downward facing dog. From here, again, we don't hold for 5 breaths. Inhale, we jump through to seated with the legs straight. Another video will break down that jumping through. So we find a seated position with the legs straight, the feet are awake, the feet are flexed, and I like to think about the heels rooting down into the mat and the base of the big toes reaching forward. And then the legs are strong, so you're lifting the kneecaps towards the hips. You find your sit bones on the floor, like the sit bones are plugging into the earth. And then the hands are next to the hips, but lightly touching. You're not pushing the hands down to help you lift the heart up. Instead, you're allowing the sit bones to sink down into the mat. The hands are just resting on the floor. And you're drawing the lower belly in and using that energy of drawing in the lower belly, engaging the pelvic floor to lift the heart up. As you drop the shoulders down without pinching the shoulder blades. Sometimes when we want to lift the heart up, we want to do this. Pinch the shoulder blades and then use that to help us open the heart. But we want to drop the shoulder blades without pinching them and lift the heart by drawing the lower belly in and just finding that energy to help lift the heart. And then that becomes a more natural opening through the heart instead of like this forced opening through the heart where we're closing the backside. Ideally, you want to keep the heart open and spread the backside. And then from there, we drop the chin, but just enough to spread the base of the skull. It's not like this, where the spine starts to collapse. The spine stays straight, the whole spine stays straight, and then we're just dropping the chin just enough to spread the base of the skull, but we're keeping, it kind of feels like a dropping down and pulling in. You can imagine like a shell, like a seashell. It kind of wraps over, but then it keeps curling in. So it's not just going down. It's going down and then curling in. So that's kind of like the energetic sensation you want to imagine. Another good imagery is like Patanjali's cobra head, that the cobras are coming over, but then they're coming back towards his heart. So that's the same thing you want to feel when you're dropping the chin in Dandasana. And then here, if you have really short arms, then maybe your fingertips are just touching. If you have long arms, then maybe the elbows are a little bit bent. So don't feel like you need to straighten the arms, because that might get in the way of the posture depending on the length of your proportions. And then if you're here and you're finding a hard time finding a straight spine because maybe the sit bones are coming forward because the hamstrings are tight, so they're pulling the pelvis forward, one thing you can do is bend the knees. And I think this is a fun thing to experiment with, even if you have long hamstrings. Bend the knees, and as you press the elbows down into, the heels down into the floor, you pull them towards you. And so what that does is that gives you the leverage to rotate the pelvis. And it feels so good, even if you have long hamstrings. So you really feel that position that you want the pelvis in, with the sit bones moving back. And then from there, you right on top of the sit bones, which is putting the pelvis in a neutral position. And from that neutral position, you can really find a straight spine that's like easeful. It's not like stuck and contracted. You're kind of finding this straight spine, and you feel that energy moving up the spine and then out through the crown of the head and then back in towards the heart with the chin moving down. And then I also really love this posture. It's kind of like after all that heat you built up from the standing postures, you just did a lot of work. You did all that work of connecting into the ground. The legs were engaged. You're breathing continuously the whole time. And here's a moment to sort of just pause, continue the breath, and maybe even reconnect with the breath. If you lost that connection through the standing postures, reconnect with the breath, really deepen it, tune into the movements of the diaphragm and the movements of the rib cage, expanding, spreading out, and contracting. So feel into those movements of the breath and feel the residue. Feel the residue from all of those standing postures, from all of that effort you put into connecting into the ground. So maybe tuning into that like earthy quality that you feel in the body now as the pelvis is connecting into the earth. You know, this is the first time the pelvis connects into the earth, and the pelvis is the earthiest part of our bodies. So just feel that residue that we did connecting into the earth and our pelvis connecting into the earth. How does that feel in the body? So we're still here. And it's not a very complicated posture. So we can take the effort and really listen to the body and just listen to what it's telling us, the feedback from everything that we've done up until this point. All right, this is going to set us up really nicely too for the next posture, which we'll do in the next video.